Ooh, 1 month ago, huh? I think that might be the longest gap between uploads in the history of this channel, which is almost 14 years old, by the way. The anniversary is on July 20th, so happy almost birthday, Captain Sparkles. Of course, we had Pros Don't Talk Shorts for a few months before that, but speaking of, is anybody out there? If you had told me several years ago that there would be a 1 month gap between uploads on this channel, I'd be like, so I die in several years? But it's interesting. It actually worries me less now, and I wonder if it's because of a change in my own perspective or because I notice a shift in the YouTube meta as a whole, but it seems that audiences are much more accepting these days of less frequent uploads on channels in favor of them being higher value videos each time. And I do think it is drastically different now than it was 14 years ago when I started, and it feels a bit freeing. I still don't know if anyone is actually going to be out there watching, but hi, good to see you. I haven't just been twiddling my thumbs over the last month. I've been doing tons of live streaming. Of course, the VOD uploads on the second channel, but for those who don't follow that, been a little while. Good to hopefully still see you on the almost birthday of the channel. That said, I've had, a little over a month now, just kind of reflecting on the last 14 plus years of making content, but not just the content itself, also just life with this as my primary focus for probably not exactly 14 years, since I didn't do full time until I had been going for a little bit. But I actually wanted to make a video sharing some of my regrets, which sounds very negative, but more so lessons, things I might have done differently, I should say. I've been extremely fortunate, so I don't want anyone to interpret them as complaints, but more so, I assume there are a few people out there watching this who maybe make content themselves, and even though I can't change the past, maybe there are lessons that could be learned from for other people, could be helpful, or just interesting to hear regardless. So again, I don't want anyone to interpret it as complaints, just things that I think could maybe help other people as they're going through things. Some of them YouTube related, a couple that I'll leave to the end because they're probably just boring or more just general life things. But yeah, why not go into it? Okay, the first one's gonna sound ridiculous, but just wait to hear out my explanation, okay? I regret not fully committing to Minecraft. And you're gonna say, what do you mean? It's all Minecraft all the way down. What do you mean you didn't commit? Okay, so hear me out. In the early days of Minecraft content, 2011, 2012, when it was really on its come up and my Minecraft videos were getting really huge amounts of views, especially in relation to the general Minecraft content out there, I desperately did not want to be the Minecraft guy, the Minecraft YouTuber, and so I very intentionally would try to seek out other games to bring into the mix and make different videos, not just because I was like, this is a really fun game that I want to play and that I'm interested in. It was more so the motivation of, I need to break apart the Minecraft content so that I will not be known as a Minecraft YouTuber. And it was a purely psychological thing. There was no need to do this, but I, as a person, am often very conscious of how others think of me. And I think there was just something about being pigeonholed by the general viewership populace out there as a Minecraft YouTuber that I tried to avoid, and so it prevented me from delving quite as deeply at that time as I possibly could have. And the irony of the whole situation is, of course, in this day and age, if you say Captain Sparkles to someone, they'll be like, oh, that's the Minecraft guy, right? So it didn't actually end up having the effect that I was aiming for it to. I'm still known as the Minecraft guy, one of them, obviously. And so in retrospect, it's like, why did I bother to do any of this stuff instead of just, fully embracing it? Obviously, that was what the viewers were most interested in at the time. Why was I wanting to shove that off to a certain extent? So that is one of the things that I regret. I think I was just being silly. There was no reason not to just embrace making the content people wanted to see. But I had this resistance to it, this contrarianism that no, I have to still be able to do these other things, despite the fact that this is the content that my audience wants to see. So hopefully that makes more sense. Again, I know you saying, what do you mean you didn't commit to Minecraft? But that's part of the whole thing as to why it was so silly, is because that's what I ended up being known as anyway. And so, sure, in more recent years, I was just like, this is fine, this is what I'm going to do. But earlier on, I was very stubborn about the whole thing, and I think that was a mistake. And so a lesson to be learned from that, again, if you are someone making content, is, if people like a particular format and they're watching it, there's no need to shoehorn other things in if that format is working. Obviously, if people stop being interested, then yeah, you should look for other options, look to pivot, but there's no sense in sabotaging yourself while something is working, which I, for some reason, just felt compelled to do. Obviously, it all worked out fine, but it feels a little silly in the end. Another one of my regrets, and I think it ties into what I was just talking about with how I didn't want to be perceived as the Minecraft YouTuber guy, is that especially early on into making videos, I think I was overly concerned with what other people thought of me, or I should say what I thought other people thought of me, and not even you guys watching these videos, which is the irony of the whole thing, but just other creators in the space at the time. And don't get me wrong, I think you should be conscious of your actions and aim to have a good reputation, and I always have. I'm not about to go, God, I wish I committed more crime early on, and I could have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those pesky morals of mine. But more so, I was very concerned that with the cadence of videos that I uploaded, focusing entirely on Minecraft as a new game that was really like on the rise, other people were going to judge me and be like, he's just spamming out videos. He's just milking a trend. I don't like that guy. Regardless of, people really enjoying the videos and there being an audience for it and me having fun making them, I allowed myself to sort of hold back a bit to what I might have done otherwise, just because I was worried about the judgment of other creators at the time about me doing something that obviously is not hurting anyone, that is only making content that people are interested in. But again, I just couldn't stop thinking about, but what if that makes other people think that I'm just like bandwagoning, that my videos aren't good because of how many I'm posting, independent of anything else as far as how the videos are actually received by the people watching them. And so this may be very much a me thing, but it is very much a me regret. But I also think for anyone out there, if you're letting what do other people think of you guide your decisions at all, again, as long as this is something that is not hurting anyone, then you should probably just keep making your content. Now, of course, if people are judging you because you are making it's just a prank bro content in public harming other people, then that's a different story. But when it comes to your Minecraft video game recorded videos, I think it's something that I should have been a little bit less concerned about at the time, and I should have just been more focused on doing my own thing. And that said, there was never anyone who concretely came to me and said, I think you're terrible. I think you're a sellout. What you're doing is wrong. It was completely internalized. And I just wish that it was something I had managed to not do. Another regret, and I don't know if it's even a regret, if it's a behavior that I still haven't really changed to the present day, but it's a perpetual regret and will continue to be a regret going on into the future, is that I've always been really bad at trying to reach out to people and collaborate on content. I am very reserved and introverted, and so it takes a lot for me to actually go and reach out to someone and try to arrange something and make it happen. And while I've done it, I do think there were infinitely more opportunities to work with other people over the years that I was just always like, but what if they're not interested? I'm going to feel bad, but it's going to be a lot of work to arrange this and, get everyone's schedule lined up. And so for that reason, I just very, very rarely did it. And oftentimes participating in collaborations would be because somebody else is arranging them and I'm being invited to it, which is very much often the case today, especially in live stream content and servers that I play on. And so it's something that while I have not really adjusted my behavior on to this day, it is something I should have adjusted my behavior on previously, should adjust it today, and should adjust it into the future. But I don't know if I will. But what I'm trying to say is just don't be me and try to be more social and make content with other people and collaborate and have fun, because usually after the fact, I'm happy that I did it. It's just, it's very like, it's draining to me because of my introvertedness. And yeah, for that reason, I've just not done it. And it will always be a perpetual regret, most likely, unless I find some way to change my behavior. I don't have to, but I should. And I'm constantly kicking myself for it, but just one of those things to throw out. So this next one's interesting because there's certainly regret to an extent. If I just look at the money invested, the time spent, and the opportunity cost for that, it was objectively a bad decision. But hindsight is also 20/20, and I think this is a mistake that if I didn't do it here, I probably would have done it at some point else in the future, because it was a lesson I had to learn through actually going through it. So some of you may remember this mobile game that I worked on, 9-10 years ago now, based on the dates of the videos, called Fortress Fury. Originally, Fortress Fallout, until we got our cease and desist. And when it launched, I'm still amazed to this day how many installs it got. Like, it blew away all our expectations. The problem was, it was just not a very stable game. We didn't have the infrastructure in place in order to maintain it, roll out frequent updates, and it just wasn't able to sustain itself. It did not really earn any revenue, and it was very expensive out of pocket to develop. It was 50-50 between myself and a partner who had a lot of experience in the games industry. And so anyway, the lesson to be had here, and again, why I think it's hard to view the entire thing as regret, is because I do think I had to experience it firsthand to really get it. And that is that people who are successful at something, let's say YouTube videos in this case, tend to overestimate their ability to transition that success into another vertical. So I viewed it as, hey, I make YouTube videos about video games, which is tangentially related to making the games themselves, so why not give it a try making a game? I can show my audience, they'll download it, play it, and everything will work itself out. I had no business taking a 50% stake and bootstrapping game development. I should have taken a much smaller stake in a project. It would have been much cheaper for me, and I could have focused entirely on the thing that I was good at, which is making content, letting people know about the game. But maybe it was just a 5% stake. Even that other 95% could have been the expertise and infrastructure needed in order to truly develop a quality product. And then I could have been a smaller part of a much, much larger pie, rather than sitting at home for a couple hours every single night, beta testing each new build of the game, trying to report bugs. This is not my strong suit. I should be focused on how do I get the word out, how do I make the content, and make sure that people are still watching my videos so that they will watch when I'm letting them know about this game. And so if you are a creator, if you are looking to do something else, first off, you should expect there's a good chance it's not going to work, as any new business oftentimes fails. But don't overestimate yourself just because you've had success in making content. Try to surround yourself in people who really have the experience. And like I said, I had a co-founder, but 50% was still far too much for me to be handling here. So I think it is much wiser to take a smaller portion of something that is more likely to succeed with the expertise that's needed, rather than trying to do it all yourself, because there's a good chance it won't work out. There are exceptions, obviously. And there are plenty of people out there who make YouTube videos who have a definitive expertise in a certain area that they can leverage, and it makes more sense there. For me, game development is not something I had any formal expertise in, so it applies to that situation, not so much someone who is a woodworker on YouTube doing a woodworking business or something like that. So anyway, But as a whole, I do think that people who are successful at something do overestimate their abilities in other things, and it's a pitfall to try to avoid. These last couple of regrets are more general life things as opposed to being YouTube specific, so I may lose some of you here, but also means it's potentially more widely applicable than just for video content creators. So the first one, and it's gonna sound silly because it's more like, oh, instead of being 90% efficient, I could have been 100% efficient. But I wish that I had sat on less a percentage of cash to overall assets as I have at certain points, rather than just putting it into equities for investment. Don't get me wrong, I have maxed the heck out of any and all retirement vehicles available to the best of my ability, but I have at times, rather than deploying cash that's been sitting as investments, I've sat on it being like, what if I'm gonna end up getting a car or making another unwise purchase? And I haven't made, other than cars, too many terribly unwise purchases. It also pains me to think if back in 2015, all of what was invested into Fortress Fury had just been deployed into equities in the overall market. I don't like to think about it. I shouldn't think about it because I can't change the past. But just as a general rule, I should have been better at following, leave a couple of years of expenses available, but then anything beyond that, and again, very privileged position to be in, I know, and not necessarily a globally relatable one, but for anyone fortunate enough to be in a position to make that decision, it is generally a good idea to follow that practice. Again, there is some recency bias to this in that, maybe if I had started in 1999 and I was making this video in 2009, I would have been like, God, I regret putting anything at all into equities, period. Holy frick, I lost everything. So, it very much, I recognize that it could just be a function of how the last 14 years have been basically straight up in equities markets. But I do, as a general rule, think it is good practice to do so rather than sitting on a huge amount of excess cash. So again, I realize coming from a very privileged position, but if there is anyone else in that position, it is just something to consider, and it is something I wish that I had done differently. But like I said, I am not complaining about 90% efficiency versus 99% efficiency, and I recognize that. All right, my last regret here is gonna be a bit of a hot take, and it could easily be its own video, but that video would make a lot more sense on a finance channel than it would here. Anyway, here goes. I, for the most part, regret home ownership. I have owned 3 homes over the years, or more accurately, I've owned a little bit of 3 homes and the bank has owned most of them. Only ever primary residences, one at a time. Oh God, the idea of owning a rental investment property gives me anxiety of which I cannot speak. As you can tell, I do not like overhead. I do not like responsibility. I have no employees. I have no pets. I don't like to worry about those things. And homeownership is, ironically, the complete antithesis of that, and I have done it 3 times, including I am sitting in the 3rd of those homes right now, of which, ironically, I'm probably going to stay in. However, I would do it differently in retrospect, starting at the very beginning. Now, I do want to say, I know that even being able to regret something like this comes from a position of having been extremely fortunate to even be able to experience it in the first place, and that everyone's experience is drastically different in something like this. I might be singing a totally different tune if instead of my first condo in 2014, I had bought a house in Las Vegas and it had quadrupled in value since. I might be like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened, as long as that house hadn't required a significant amount of maintenance that had caused me to rip my hair out over the years. But I also know that there are plenty of people who really enjoy the maintenance and working on their own house, and they get emotional gratification from that, and that I am unique in that aspect, that I'm just not one of those people. So in my mind, home ownership is a little overrated. And I know that's an unpopular opinion that's going to stir the pot a little bit, but I think one of the reasons why homeownership is seen to be as desirable as it is because, at least in the US, from the day you're born, it is marketed to you as homeownership is the ultimate pinnacle of success. You've made it in life when you get that grass lawn and the white picket fence, and that is what you should strive to achieve. And if it weren't for that marketing, I think that the entire real estate environment would be drastically different. And I recognize that the emotional considerations are very important to a lot of people when it comes to homeownership. And hypocritically, it looks like, despite all my complaining that I've done on stream, I am probably going to try to stick it out in the long term in this home because it is absolutely beautiful. It's just a lot of maintenance, but I know that 20 years from now, if I'm still here, it will have worked out to have been a better financial deal than renting. It's just going to take a very long time for that break even to take place. And that said, in today's environment, at least with home prices and interest rates as elevated as they are in both columns, it is almost universally, financially speaking, a better deal to rent than it is to buy, which, again, purely financially speaking, not everywhere, but in most places, at least within the US and many other countries. But again, I'm in the US, so that's where my experience is. So I don't want to say that the emotional considerations are not of value. It's just that, again, I'm a little iffy on the whole homeownership thing, despite being a hypocrite sitting to you in the house in which I am a homeowner at the moment. So, but I just don't think it's cracked up to, all the people say it is. Now, if you bought your home 20 years ago, it's fully paid off, that whole sort of thing, then, you're sitting pretty at that point. But especially if you're just looking to buy your first home today, it is, just know that financially it's probably not the best decision. But emotionally, if you're really attached and you can do it, then obviously you can do what you want. This is just my own experience, and yours will definitely vary. Anyway, that's basically it for going over some of my biggest regrets over the years. I hope it didn't come across as complaining in any way, more so just, it's interesting to put it out there, and maybe some people can learn from it. And anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and see you in the next one.